Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the seminar on how to grow your business beyond six figures. Today, I'll be taking you through some of the key concepts that I've learned to be impactful in growing a business. We only have an hour or so I'll keep it brief because I do want to get to a live Q&A if you have any questions. Please don't spam the chat and keep it respectful. I do encourage people to share their LinkedIn profiles as a way of networking. By the way, stay until the end for a free gift that I'll be offering. So let's begin. Just a little bit about me. I had a corporate career for 12 years. I've had over 20 years of customer service experience that also started with the family business and other various jobs that involved customer service. I have a Bachelor of Commerce in Business Management, and I started consulting in 2019 as a side job. And then in 2022, I was successfully able to take it into a full-time career. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies before. I've also consulted for large companies. And just a personal note about me is I'm married and I have a 6-year-old son. Okay, so who's this seminar for? Not only for business owners. This seminar is for leaders who want to help their organization grow their impact as well as their revenue. So those two key growth elements are what we're here to discuss today because we'll be talking about how to grow both of them. So here's a checklist that I've created. This checklist is based on what I know to be key concepts in having a business and growing the business. Now, you can have a successful business and not have everything on this checklist. I know there's people out there, businesses out there that have grown a successful business and been doing it for years without having all of these elements. I've seen people with Gmail accounts for their businesses that have done really well and continue to do well. However, in order to scale a business beyond six figures, these items become more necessary. So let's go through them one by one. A company website. So a company website is the first touch point usually that a prospect or a client or a lead will see. And that website really needs to work as your number one employee because often a buyer is not just going to buy from one touch point or simply talking to you or looking at your LinkedIn profile. There's going to be multiple touch points. On average, it takes about 7 or 8 touch points for somebody to buy a product or service from you. So by having a website that's doing the work for you, acting as a sales rep, you increase the number of touch points and make that touch point of much higher quality. That's where you can make a difference in your sales process. Logo and branding, and also a domain email. So a logo and branding makes your company more recognizable. It's simply how customers know who you are. And the more that they see it, the more credible and easily recognizable the company becomes. Using your email address, your domain as an email address, like for example, mine is sanjay@imaconsulting.co. This email address could act as a touch point in itself because if I'm emailing somebody and I'm using sanjay@gmail.com versus sanjay@imaconsulting.co, which is my current email, that in itself has acted as a touch point that shows off the company. So using your email, it's an additional touch point, and in order to create more touch points, you have to make sure that it's also uniform throughout. So one logo, one or not one color, but your branding should also be consistent throughout all your different touch points. So don't use a different logo that would be from one social media to another. Make sure that there's consistency throughout all your touch points. Systems and spreadsheet systems. So most of us will use a spreadsheet to run the day-to-day operation. This is a foundational piece of your business, and it's how your business is run on a daily basis. Now, if you're a B2C, if you're a B2C business, it's a little bit, it's a little bit harder to manage all your customers on a spreadsheet. So for a B2C customer, I would actually recommend using a CRM. Now, CRMs are actually much less costlier than than a than an ERP system is. And an ERP system could be thousands of dollars, where a CRM could be a couple of $100 a year. So if you're going to grow your business, then make sure that you have some sort of system in place. Even if it's a spreadsheet, that's okay. But generally, you want to move towards a CRM, a customer relationship management software. And next, so we talk about tools such as Calendly, Zoom, and Grammarly. These are just some of the tools that I utilize. And now you might say, what's the difference between a tool and a system? Well, a system is really much how you get things done. A tool is what you would use to do a specific job. So, for example, if you are looking to book an appointment with a prospect or a client, you can use a tool such as Calendly versus the back and forth of, hey, what time works for you? Oh, this time doesn't work for me. Just provide them the Calendly link and ask them if it's all right with them. Because you don't want to just give them a Calendly link and say it's now your job to book it. You want to be you want to be very mindful that you're requesting them to use the link to book a meeting with you. So choosing the right tool is really the difference between hammering a nail with a stapler or a hammer. Now, you can use a stapler to hammer a nail. Um, you might break the stapler or you might damage the wall, or maybe your nail doesn't go in all the way. You know that a hammer is going to do a better job of getting that nail where it needs to be. So the difference of making choosing the right tool can make a difference in your business. Knowledge materials. Now, knowledge materials are very important. One thing I will share here about knowledge materials is that I've worked in large organizations, and not even large organizations always have knowledge materials. It's something that really depends on the either the organization or the leader to say we need knowledge materials in the business. So what's I think what's great about knowledge materials is that it allows a person to step away from the day to day if they need to. So if I'm the owner of a business, how I operate my business should be documented somewhere. So that way an employee or a staff member could take on that responsibility. Now, let's say you hire a virtual assistant because you're a one-person show, and that virtual assistant needs to get, hours of training because there's so much that you do. If you are able to just create training documents and how-to documents, then that virtual assistant is going to be able to leverage those materials in the future whenever they need to. And they don't have to keep coming back to you and asking questions about, oh, that thing that you showed me, sorry, I forgot. What do I click here? If you put it into a knowledge material, then that is documented, and you don't have to worry. Oh, well, you don't have to worry about those pesky questions all the time. You might have a question here and there, but those are more questions about, more non-process related questions that might be more about, how to do things in a correct way. And the other thing about knowledge materials, I know I'm kind of going on about this one, but just by documenting the whole process, it makes training easier, and it also allows you to catch some gaps. So if I were to force you to create a how-to document on everything that you do today, how would that change your mindset about how you do your business? Would you potentially see gaps and say, I do this, but I don't know why I do it this way. It takes so long. If I just did it this other way, I could probably save an hour or two a week. So just by creating these knowledge materials gives you an upper hand in how to run your business. Next, marketing plan. So you probably know by now that you don't really need a marketing plan in order to be successful. You do need customers, and marketing plan is not always going to get you customers, but you do need to know who your customers are and what is your unique value proposition. So what is it that you sell that is of value that the customer needs? And most importantly, or just as important, I believe, is creating awareness for your service or product, because you can have the greatest solution in the world. You can have, the greatest product ever invented after sliced bread, but if nobody knows about it, then you're not going to have customers, and not having customers would be fatal to your business. And one thing I will say about a marketing plan is it's essentially a study of your customers and knowing where they are, how they shop, and even more importantly, what your customers' goals are. So having a customer profile that is created for your business allows you to more quickly identify their needs, their wants, and just knowing what the customer looks like and what attributes to look for. So that way you can easily identify them if they were to walk into a room where you were at. So that's creating a marketing plan. A business strategy. So business strategy is simply being able to use your resources, which are limited, and most resources, which are time and money, are always going to be limited. You might have more cash than time or more time than cash. How, whatever the scenario is, you should have a business strategy that helps you determine how to utilize your limited resources. What you want to be able to do is know where your greatest return on investment is going to be. If you're going to spend 1 hour doing an activity, know what your investment or your return on investment of that 1 hour is going to be. If you spend $400 on a marketing campaign, just know what the return on that is going to be. Now, it could be a little bit difficult to figure that one out, but it's not entirely impossible to be able to figure that one out. So I do highly recommend that you're utilizing a document to keep on top of what it is that the business is trying to accomplish with its limited number of resources is extremely paramount to the growth of your business. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about key performance indicators. So this is really just a metric that allows you to see how well your business is doing. So going back to the last slide, if you had 5 hours of of time working on your business versus, let's say, you watch Netflix for 10 hours, you would see that the KPIs would show 5 hours working on your business versus 10 hours not working on your business and working on doing or using that time for entertainment is going to show in the KPIs that you're doing something wrong. Ideally, KPIs is the metric that you're using to track your growth, and that might not always be time spent on a certain activity. For example, it might actually be how many customers have you spoken to? How many times did you reach out to a customer? So you want to be able to track the different data points in your business so that way you can know exactly how your business is trending. Knowing where your business is going is critical. So if you can't measure if you can't measure growth, then you won't be able to do it as successfully as if you were to put in some KPIs and have a stick to measure with. Okay, so now the seminar is about growing your business beyond just 6 figures. And so up to this point, we were talking about elements that are, I feel, necessary to get your business to 6 figures. Now it's more about going beyond the 6 figures. So if we wanted to go beyond 6 figures, here's some key elements that are required. So business values being the number one thing. Number two, who, not what. So think who, not what. And number three is leadership. Leadership is critical to the growth of a business. So why is business values number one? Business values, they're not necessarily critical to making money. I was able to make money with my consulting business before having business values, and I did pretty decent without having values. But having values really increases the earning potential of your business, and it also creates clarity. And clarity is extremely important because, as we know, resources are limited. If we know what it is that we're trying to accomplish, then that clarity can be paramount towards growing the business. So I actually didn't just come up with this myself. I pay into mentorship programs, and one of the entrepreneurs that was the head of the mentorship group, they shared this story with me, and the story was he and his brother were business partners in United States. And they had a supplement shop for years. And I think they had it for about 8 or 9 years before the entrepreneur that was talking to us. He said 8 or 9 years into the business, and we were struggling. We weren't really making money, sleeping in the back of the store half of the time. We decided that we needed some values in the business. And he told us that creating business values was really the catalyst for growth in his business, because what it did was give his business clarity, as well as it provides a compass. So we always talk about, business, the mission, the vision, and those key elements, which often are in the business plan, which is why you don't see it here. But we don't really talk about business values. And business values are something that makes a big difference in an organization. Now, I have my values here on my website, and these have been more than just sharing these values with others. These values have been important for my own business growth. The big one here for me personally was identifying competency as a business value. Because competency is so important, I asked myself, am I the right person for this client? Is my team the right people for this client? Because if we're not, then we should really be referring them to somebody else. So what I learned after doing business values or creating them was there's a certain type of client where I have high levels of competency working with. And those high competency clients that I can work with, they get a really high ROI on the investments they make in my consulting business. So by doing this exercise, I've been able to identify more clarity on what my business does and even who my business serves. And this has been a catalyst for my business because I've been doing things differently. I've started to spend where I see more of an ROI. So it's helped with having limited resources as an extremely small business. I'm able to focus on my competencies. So that is going to be extremely critical for business growth. Now, remember I said think who, not what, or even how. So we often think about, okay, what needs to be done and how are we going to do it? Now, by asking the question of who is going to do it, we shift our perspective to that of a leader, because delegation is really the critical factor to growth. If a business owner or a leader is unable to successfully delegate their responsibilities, then they become stuck in what's called the whirlwind. The whirlwind is just your day-to-day task that you just seem to be drowning in. You don't, there's not enough hours in the day or the week to be able to get through it all. So that's why it's extremely important to think of who, not just what or how. A quick example of this one is if you are, let's say, looking to design a website and you're just starting off and you're thinking, okay, I can put a WordPress website together by myself and it's only going to cost me about 100, 200 bucks. So you go ahead and do that, but if you had hired a WordPress or even a website designer for, let's just say, 1,000 bucks. Now, 1,000 bucks is a lot of money to be just forking over, but if you're instead of spending, let's say, 30 to 40 hours designing a website, if you had spent that 30 to 40 hours on, let's say, doing Uber or having a part-time job, then you could take that money and invest it in your business, invest it in an expert. And that's the whole idea here, is that whoever is going to be delegated a responsibility, essentially they're going to be the expert in what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So if I spend 40 hours doing a website versus I pay someone to do a website, that's going to look completely different. And when I started my business, I created my own website and it looked like I created my own website. Now that I've invested the money into a professional who designs websites, that website looks way better and I actually get a lot of compliments on my website. So lastly, for this part, I just want you to think about who can help me, not just what needs to be done and how am I going to do it. Think who is going to help me, who is going to do this. And lastly here, I talk about leadership. The key element of leadership is communication. Without communication, we're not going to be able to advance the company or the business much further than where it is now. Communication is usually a critical factor to the downside of a business as well. Because if you have a great product or a business and you're not able to communicate that to your ideal customers, then they don't know what it is that you're offering them. Often we know in our heads what needs to be done and what value we provide to people, but if we can't articulate that and communicate that, then we're not going to be doing so well. And that's why I put this in the leadership pillar, because I've seen that the best leaders are also the best communicators. And it's not necessarily that a leader has to be they have to be an extrovert. It's more about your communication, and it could even be one-on-one communication. One-on-one communication is actually paramount. So I'll give you an example of this one because this just happened yesterday. I was at my son's basketball game and they were playing 5-on-5, and there was a kid on the other team who he was about to shoot and he got fouled, but he got fouled after the whistle had blown. And so this kid, I mean, they're like 6, 7, 8-year old. The kid was upset and he started crying because he got fouled on his shot. And so the kid went to his parents crying, and the head coach, which is running the whole league, he's there and he's on his microphone and he's saying through the microphone that there was a foul after the whistle. And he repeated this a few times as the kid was crying and sulking to the parents. And so what is to be learned from that example is that him being the leader should go to the parents and in a one-on-one conversation, let them know that yes, it was a foul, but unfortunately, because the whistle had already blown, that we couldn't award him the free throws. If he had gone ahead and communicated in a way where he wasn't being in defensive mode or trying to ration or explain or excuse the actions of the referee, that situation would have turned out differently because that communication was meant to be more personal. It wasn't meant to be announced through a microphone for everybody to hear. It should have been done in a one-on-one situation. So uh, just to wrap that story up, the coach who we spoke to after had let us know that, the parent was very upset, and they were very upset because he had waited so long to go and actually do the personal one-on-one communication. And I think he only went because he saw that they were visibly still distressed. And that's such a powerful transition into the real world, because sometimes when employees are distressed or customers are distressed, they're not going to come to you right away. They're going to let that fester and build up. And leaders should be asking more proactively, how is your day going? What are some blocks that you're experiencing? How can I help make your experience better? And I think employees and customers both need to be communicated that there are, there are leaders that are empathetic towards how these individuals are feeling. So that was a bit of a long-winded explanation on leadership, but I just wanted to drive home the fact of the criticality of communication in leadership. Now, there's a few books here that aren't showing up, but just give me a second. I do want to share these book recommendations because I love books, and I'd still want to share them. Quick second. I gotta find out why they don't show up, but so here's my I guess let's say top 5 leadership book recommendations. Start with why the 5 dysfunctions of a team, the 7 habits of highly effective people, and the 21 immutable laws of leadership. And I think my personal favorite is how to win friends and influence people. That those are my top 5 leadership books if you're looking to learn more about leadership. So just to wrap things up here, so question and answer time. So now that we've gone through the presentation, just wanted to open up this time for question and answers. And at this point, I will ask Rob to come off mute and ask me a question. Hello, Rob.
Sanjay, how you doing?
Good, thanks. You?
It's good. Thank you for this webinar. It's very interesting. I do have one question slash comment. At the beginning, you said it takes 6 to 10 touch points for a customer to, I'll say, go forward.
Yeah.
Um, is that written in stone, or does that depend on the customer and the business?
I think that that number is, well, the number that I found was, I think it was 7 or 8 on average. I personally think that it's about 6 to 10. I've dealt with customers that were became clients even before the 6. It was like it was 2 phone calls, but in between you really don't know how many times the customer is getting in touch with one of your touch points. So like for example, the website, an email that you send that has your signature, your logo, your branding, your domain email, right? So all of these things will act as as an important touch point with the ideal customer. And it also depends on industry. Sometimes you just have longer sales cycles. So if you have longer sales cycles, chances are you probably need more touch points. And that's why a lot of these larger companies that have longer sales cycles, they require more materials because they want those materials to be front and center and of top of mind to the customer, because they know that it's going to take some time. We can't always just reach out to a prospect and say, "Oh, hey, how's it going? Are you interested yet?" It's more so like, "Hey, here's 10 ways we found that businesses in your industry are thriving, right? They spend the time, the resources to be able to create those knowledge materials that they then go ahead and share with their ideal clients. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay,
Um,
perfect.
one other
Any,
question I have, if I may. Um,
absolutely.
given the what's happened with COVID, although it's kind of on and off now, is it better if you can to meet in person, or is it better to do it online?
I think starting in person is always going to be better because it helps establish rapport better. And
Okay.
then you have to have the online interaction as well because it's tough to always meet in person, but meeting somebody new in person versus online, I think there is a vast difference because just an example is I went to a trade show a couple of weeks back. I met everybody in person. And because I met everybody in person, I was able to generate a lot of interest and inquiries in my business. And I've probably talked to, the same number of people through LinkedIn on Zoom, you know, over the last year, and that didn't result in the same amount of interest in my business that it did when I attended an event where I was able to meet somebody in person. It just allows you to learn a little bit more about a person versus just having a discussion through a screen or a video conference. But good
Makes
question.
sense.
I think it requires both because you
Makes
definitely
sense.
have to develop a relationship once you've met in person. Right? Like you can't just, think that, okay, because I've met this person in real life that now I have the upper hand. It's really about those follow-ups and those other touch points. So it's not always about, here's something for you to consider. It's also just interacting with them, for example, through LinkedIn and engaging in their content if they're producing content, engaging in people in their network as well. It's just sometimes the comments that I'm leaving on other people's social media posts, like LinkedIn, that is getting me a lot of visibility to the people that I've already met, right? So when I've already
Cool.
met them, it increases the likelihood that we can deepen our relationship and our
That
connection.
makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah,
I struggle in my job, and I've struggled with this over the years. When I'm trying to, let's say I've not met person in person for whatever reason, but I'm trying to start a process where I get to know a person,
yeah.
whether I should phone them or email them, and what's the ratio of one to the other?
And I think that you're going to learn that it depends on the person as much as, the form of communication, because there's also a third one, right? Like a lot of people will likely respond to you on LinkedIn. I've noticed that happen with certain individuals. So really, I think it's about sequencing, right? Like have the sequencing of a phone call, email, and then a LinkedIn
Yeah.
follow-up. And if those three don't work, then you probably want to try, at least once more to go through that sequence. Because at that point, you're at about, you've tried about 6 times to reach out, and if they haven't responded or contacted you, then I believe it's time to move on. Yeah,
Okay.
and thanks for sharing.
Uh, okay. The last thing I wanted to ask you personally, you
Sure.
mentioned the importance of leadership. What would you say is it? I guess it's a two-part question. One, what kind of leader are you? And more important to this webinar, what is the best, how can I phrase this? What would you say is the best form of leadership with respect to growing your business?
I mean, It's a good question. It's a really thought-provoking one because it requires me to do an inward reflection of, what type of leader am I? And to be honest with you, there's personality and profile characteristic profile assessments that will give you the answer, right? Like a DISC personality test would essentially give if I had done one, I would be able to tell you exactly what type of leader I am. And I think that's actually an opportunity for me to take an assessment like that and see where I am in terms of my leadership, because then it also provides insights on how I need to go forward, knowing that this is the type of leader I am. These are the steps and actions that I should be taking in order to become a better leader. So I think getting an assessment done of what type of leadership trait you have is important. And I mean, right now I'm preaching it, but I myself haven't done it. I think that is a really good way to figure out what type of leader you are. And in terms of what type of leader do you need to be in order to grow the business, I'm going to go back to the idea of who, not what or how. So if you feel like you can't be the type of leader that can rally 100 people towards one common goal, then maybe you need to hire a CEO, right? You might not be the leader, you might be the tech person or the salesperson who's great at selling the product and the service, or you might be an amazing coder and you're able to create these products, these software products, almost in no time with crazy amount of features and benefits. But in terms of leadership, that might be a quality that you lack. And that's why I made the book recommendations, because you have to understand how to still essentially, I'm going to say, win friends and influence people, right? The influence thing in leadership is the most critical, because if I'm talking to you, I have to figure out a way to be of influence, right? Right now, the influence that I want to have on you, let's say, might be different on the influence I want to have on a staff member, because the staff member, ideally there's roles and responsibilities that I want to be done, and for that reason I will have to carry myself in a different leadership style, whereas right now I'm just trying to teach and provide some knowledge. So leadership is a trait that you can learn, but it's also something that you need to practice. So it's not something that you're going to become good at overnight, but honestly, another thing that you can do, yeah, these are great leadership books that I mentioned, but there's also great leaders out there, right? We know there's some great leaders, such as, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Obama, and Gandhi, who was able to do so many amazing things, right? There's books on amazing leaders out there. And I've actually started reading more biographies of great individuals, because then I get to learn from their firsthand experience of how they were able to essentially, influence not just people, but generations, right? Like most of these individuals that I mentioned are outside of my time, but they had such an impact that they had generational impact. And that's why, we still talk about them, we still read about them. And if you want to grow a business towards, like, let's say, just generational wealth, like you want to create a company that is going to amass 8, 9 figures and be around way longer than you will be, then I think it's important to study some of the great leaders as well.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, thanks for your
that's
question,
what I've
John.
got for you.
Appreciate it. So, not that you need this, but anybody else who is watching this video, because we will be sharing the recording for anybody who wasn't able to make it, I will still provide a free call with myself. It's a 30-minute call where you can use it as a consulting session if you have questions about your business. If you want to use it as a coaching session for any entrepreneurs, I can help out with that as well. And because you've taken the time to sit through the seminar, whether it was live or through a recording, I'm more than happy to extend this offer to you. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to take in this seminar. I hope it was valuable, and please do reach out if you have any questions or feedback. Thank you very much.